Hello, preschoolers! This week we're learning about tools. So I wanted to show you some tools people use for sewing. Sewing is a job where you put fabric together to make things. Let me show you my shirt. There's sewing here on this sleeve. There's sewing holding on this pocket. There's even sewing holding on this button. I have someone here I want you to meet who's going to show us about sewing. There's two ways people can sew. They can use a machine or they can use their hands. First, we're going to talk about sewing with your hands. This is Mary, my sister Mary. And Mary, these are my preschool friends.
Hi, preschool friends.
Can you show us some of the tools you use for sewing with your hands?
Of course. One very important tool for sewing with your hands is something called a needle. I've got several needles in my pin cushion here. A needle has one end that's very sharp, and it has another end that has a little hole in it. That's called the eye of the needle. And that's where you put something called thread, which helps you hold the fabric together or hold buttons on. Over here I have some thread. It comes in all kinds of different colors.
Look at that.
And then when you're sewing, you use the needle to push the thread through the fabric. And when you're all done, you can use, bet you recognize this tool. You can use these scissors to cut your thread when you're all done so you don't have big pieces of thread hanging off your clothes.
Wow. Would you show us some sewing with your hands?
Yes. Why don't I show you a button? I have a
Great
button
idea.
here. I'm going to try and sew it onto this little piece of fabric. So I take my needle, and this one I already put some thread through, so you can see that. And I tie a knot in one end of the thread. So the thread goes through the eye of the needle, and I tie a little knot in it, and I'm ready to sew with it. So I take the needle, and I go under the fabric, and I push the needle up through the fabric. And then I take my button, and there's holes in this button. And I find one of the holes in the button, and I put it over the needle. And then I can pull the needle up through the button and the fabric. And then I'll stick it into a different hole in that button and go back down.
What is this little shiny tool you have here?
This is something called a thimble. And it helps protect my fingers when I sew with my hands. So sometimes when I'm sewing, I can't always see very well where the needle is coming out. And so I have to keep trying and pushing, and if I push it up in the wrong spot, I could poke myself. And it doesn't hurt very much, but it's not very fun either. So I use the thimble to help protect my fingers, so that if the needle comes through in the wrong place, it pokes the thimble instead of my finger.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for showing us that. I also see you have a shirt over here. Did you do any sewing by hand on this shirt?
I did. One of the things I really like to do when I sew with my hands is to make pictures. So it's not just sewing on buttons or pockets or things, but actually almost drawing with your thread. So I took different colors of thread and I used a needle and made a picture with them on this shirt.
What is this a picture of?
This is a picture of 6 dragons. I bet if you look closely, you can find them all.
6 dragons. You can pause the video if you want time to look for them, preschoolers. I'm wondering, Mary, how did you know how to make a picture like this?
I used a pattern. Patterns are also tools we use in a lot of different ways. So when I'm sewing with the pattern tells me where to put the thread and what color to use. So it's a picture on paper, and I use the pattern then to put the picture onto the fabric.
I see. Kind of like copying the picture.
It
That is
is.
very cool. Thank you, Mary. Preschoolers, coming up, we are going to see Mary and get a project ready for the sewing machine.